to my event. Your natural hair is good for church programs. Your natural hair is good for when you want to pick your kids at school. Oh, wow.
Hello guys, thanks for tuning in today. So I made a video some weeks back discussing the almost dystopian world we have created, where you can go up to a young girl, look her in the eyes, and
I'm sorry I'm going to cut your hair, but this is what we do for living. Thank you so much for allowing me. I just wanted to show you guys how we get the baby teen hair. I want to prove to you guys that we sell raw donor. Oh my gosh! We made it! Finally, we have a single donor raw baby teen hair. I'm so happy. Thank you for letting me cut your hair. Thank you so much. I love you.
And it be seen as normal. This is due to the heavy consumption and demand of human hair wigs in the black community. I got some really interesting comments and plenty completely missed my point. I talked about the weird and borderline creepy relationship that black women have with their street bundles. I criticized behaviors that perpetuate harmful ways we treat and talk about ourselves that can result in hating our hair.
And there's this whole battle, you know, natural hair versus wigs or weaves. What's your take on it?
Your natural hair is good for church programs. Your natural hair is good for when you want to pick your kids at school. Oh, wow. Don't bring your natural hair to my event.
Oh, child, the ghetto. Listen, I don't know if it's the glue or too much heat that is doing brain damage to these girls, but something is wrong somewhere. Like, the birds are birdsing and I'm sick of it. How are you doing all that and doing all that? Look, at your wig is not even sitting right on your head and you're talking as if, how do you have so much hatred for something that grows out of your head? And this is why I make the videos that I make. I'm not even going to try and be petty, and because I could say that that wig is sitting on her head like a dead wet rat, but I'm not going to go down that route. But this is what is wrong with the wig culture. You wear wigs to the point where you think it's okay and normal to say things like this.
All of you be carrying natural hair about. Who natural hair help? You better wear your wig.
There is something wrong in not just the wigs that we put on our head, but the way that we think and the things that come out of our mouths. And these are the kind of behaviors that I criticized in my other videos. Behaviors such as seeing natural hair as too inferior to be worn to special occasions, making jokes about stealing hair from Lebanese barbing salons, or flooding posts of white or Asian people who are posting videos of their hair and begging for a crumb of it, and publicly lusting over their hair in multitudes like you were some sort of shapeshifters. I think it's odd that a black woman can get mocked for wearing her natural hair because many people think that wigs should be the default, and I think mindsets like these are unhealthy. I also think that the human hair industry is highly unethical. I am aware that all aspects of capitalism are unethical, which can also be criticized, but I am making a video about hair, so I am going to be focusing on that. I think that mocking black women for wearing wigs is also counterproductive in bringing about any form of balance or growth. I am aware of the many different reasons that black women or women in general wear wigs, right? But I think it's very valid to criticize a video where a minor is being made to sell off her hair so luxurious wigs can be made out of it. And I think it's valid to criticize instances of black women being discriminatory to natural hair or borderline worshipping Asian hairs. It's no lie that many times natural hair is seen as low budget or unglamorous, and many black women are made scapegoats of white supremacy for daring to wear their hairs in its natural state. It's been several generations since slavery, but a lot of internalization has gone on, and quite frankly is why we're just now starting to relearn and unlearn while struggling to understand how to take care of our own hairs, hence the natural hair movement. And many people just give up, which is understandable. At the end of the day, in comparison to straight hair, curly or kinky hair is more tedious to deal with. This is undeniably true. My reality as an African woman living in Africa creates a nuance when having this discussion, as black women living in predominantly white societies abide by different rules and experience different treatments, but my points still stand. Racism is unacceptable, but internalized racism is too and should also be condemned. I think some comments on the video, linking above if you've not seen it yet, came from people feeling like I was taking away their rights, and I'm making air quotes right now, to wear wigs. And quite frankly, I didn't know I had that much power, but now that I am aware, I'm about to take over the world. My reign shall be eternal, and my wickedness shall have no boundaries. No, but seriously, that video was critiquing the heavy dependence we have come to have on wigs. It's a fact that many women refuse to leave the house without wigs because 1, they hate their hair. 2, they don't want to deal with their hair. 3, they don't know how to deal with their hair or what to do. 4, they don't like how their hair looks. 5, they desire above all the hair of other races. All these are facts. I think that many points people try to draw my attention to was that there were women who couldn't go out with their natural hair because they have medical conditions that affect hair growth or for other different reasons like assimilation. And honestly, I could list out 100 possible reasons as to why black women wear wigs, and it would not cover all the reasons that people wear wigs. Some people just don't give a fuck, and I think that's great too. The point of this video, or anyone that I've made, quite frankly, is not to demand that no one wear wigs. That's ridiculous. But to pick out certain problematic mindsets we have when it comes to managing our own hairs. Remember guys, it's a critique, not a judgment that sends anyone to the chopping block. I think that critiquing certain things within ourselves help us grow and brings about some self-awareness, which is good. It's perfectly okay to feel uncomfortable when certain discussions are brought up, especially when the shoe fits, but being in denial about certain bitter truths really does no good. At the end of the day, we all have our choices to make. But if those choices are fueled by self-hate, they should be unpacked and hard discussions should be had so we can have some self-awareness. And speaking of choices, let's talk about this one. This statement, I hear it a lot. It's my choice to dislike natural hair. Let black women do what they like. Yes, sweetie, that's my go-to. Black women are put under scrutiny a lot of times. They are damned if they do and damned if they don't. Black women should be able to wear their wigs or natural hair in peace. They have the right to choose if they want to wear their natural hair or to never wear their natural hair. All of these are true, but there will always be criticism of black women who choose to peddle self-hating rhetorics. I still don't think there is any sense or dignity in loitering in the comments of Asian women and loudly lusting and begging for their hair. I don't think it's right to make statements disparaging natural hair. These are choices you make, but choices that are questionable. Many black women will argue that the reason they are so heavily dependent on wigs is that natural hair can be a setback in certain societies when it comes to finding jobs, fitting in, or even finding a life partner. All these are what we call discrimination, and it's harmful. It makes life harder for black women. So why would you partake in that by talking down on natural hair? How do you intend to change things if you feed into the very ideologies that harm you? What about when you're now within your own confines and have the freedom to just be, but you say things like, I could never wear braids for my birthday, or oh, this girl's hair is too nappy, or oh, don't you dare wear your natural hair to my wedding, or are the wigs meant to be a permanent solution? Here's how I see it. Our hair grows out of our heads in the way that it does. Donning a wig and suddenly feeling superior enough to make texturist comments is odd behavior. Because let's be honest, when they say this whole, don't wear your natural hair to my event, blah, 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 oh, natural hair is ugly, they are not talking about this type of natural hair. Let's be so freaking for real, okay? They are talking about this. We know the kind of natural hair they mean when they say things like this. So I also think it's insane how deeply the wig culture has eaten, where we can now put lace fronts on little black girls. And this is yet another questionable choice that has been made, which brings me to my subtopic called the Baddy Baby. Yes, that was very uncomfortable to say. The wig culture, especially when it comes to the silky Peruvian or Vietnamese lace front, is one that now shows one's status. Like I said in my previous video, wearing a laid human hair wig now has a socio-economic impact. It shows that a woman is well-to-do and stylish, even if this wig is attached to the head of a child. I don't know why it needs to be said, but children literally have no reason to be wearing lace fronts or wigs for that matter. I don't think the style is appropriate for kids, and this has nothing to do with the weird comment of it making kids seem too grown, okay? Think about when you were a kid. As for me, personally, all I wanted to do was play and jump and nap and roll in the sand if I wanted to. The glues and laid swoopity-swoop edges on the child, and the photo shoots complete with ring lights that usually occur after this, places a kind of burden on the child that she's not allowed to mess her hair up. No child wants to be burdened with making sure her lace doesn't lift on the playground or in school. You're not even giving this child's edges a fighting chance. Most times, these laces are done to look perfect while sacrificing your natural hair. Many of us grew up associating hair day with pain and trauma. For me, Hairdressers didn't know how to handle my hair, and they made it so tight and I would have trouble sleeping for days after my hair was done. That's not normal, especially for a kid. That's why many of us grew up bald and resenting our hairs. For the new age kids with lace fronts, this can also have a mental impact that their own hair needs to be covered, because that's what a wig does. It covers your hair. Note that I'm especially highlighting the lace fronts because of the process that goes in installing one. Lace fronts are glued on and made to give the illusion of a whole new scalp, so that when it's done, you can feel like you just had a whole hair transplant. Think of the impact that will have with black girls and their natural hair, mentally and physically. We should let kids be kids. No black girl that grows up wearing lace front wigs will grow up without self-esteem issues. You are setting up a whole new generation of women who think they are not presentable or beautiful without wearing wigs. Wigs that look nothing like their real hairs. This does nothing for black women or self-image issues. What the diversion of the natural hair movement means. Let's first start by defining texturism. Texturism is a term that exists in the natural hair community. It is the discrimination that happens based on how close or far your hair is to the European beauty standards. Wavy or curly silky hair are more acceptable and deemed more worthy, and tightly coiled non-silky hair are unacceptable and deemed ugly, according to the rules of texturism. The natural hair movement began as a way to have women with unconventional hair learn to accept and take care of their hair, as information was not readily provided given the history of black hair. Along the way, it got somewhat hijacked by hairs that look like these, hairs that are silky with big visible curls that falls down one's back, and these became the face of the natural hair movement for a long time. And the most discriminated against hair still remain the most discriminated against hair. One can even say that the natural hair movement contributed in the further discrimination against natural hair. But that's a different video. It seemed like people forgot that the reason the natural hair movement began in the first place was to bring acceptance and visibility to hairs that were the least acceptable in society. Hairs that didn't fall down one's shoulders. Hairs that reached for the sky. Non-silky hairs. Hairs that didn't form fascinating curly ringlets. Hairs that were hardly seen in commercials or on TV. Hairs that were the antithesis of what is known as good hair in black American community. Hairs that had barely any representation. Hairs that majority of black people have, but interestingly enough isn't seen as much in the media. Type 4 hair. Specifically 4C hair. Now we have hairstylists, black hairstylists, who proudly refuse to take on clients with 4C hair because it's too hard. Or stylists that demand that hairs be blow dried and flat ironed before their clients come in for an appointment. It seems that looser curl patterns are now the stray hair of the black community. So what exactly was the natural hair movement for? Wearing a wig, having a perm, having looser curls, or even having type 4 hair does not make one exempt from criticism when they display self-hating tendencies. I see how we now have a society that is a bit more accepting of natural hair only when it's not too niggerish. Excuse my language. 4C hair is now used for clickbait from influencers that do not have 4C hair, so that girls whose hair do not form curls are told that their hair is just dry, and if they put on some moisturizer, it will look like the girl in the video they are watching or the influencer on their screen. And this is how the natural hair movement flopped. We did not accept ourselves. We only repacked racism into a smaller, more acceptable, more subtle box. Texturism. Are wigs your worst enemy? I think it's safe to say that wigs are a way of life at this point. We have always used wigs. They are not going anywhere. Women of all races wear wigs. It's just like clothes or makeup or any fashion accessories. No, I don't think wigs should be abolished. Like all things, there are good sides and bad sides to it. Wigs are no exception. I make these videos when I see a particular rise in trend that is tilting towards the bad side to kind of draw people's attention to it and discuss it. At the end of the day, I think our natural hair is supreme. End of story. But here are some of the ways that I think wigs serve us. Wigs are cool accessories to have. They are great fashion statements and help switch looks. Sometimes you want to see what you look like in red straight hair and you don't want to dye or relax your hair. Ta-da! Wigs to the rescue. We literally do magic with those things. Wigs honestly make things easier. Want to run a quick errand and don't want to show your 3 weeks old cornrows to the world? Slap on a wig and go. 3. It brings great relief for people suffering from hair loss problems or health issues that impedes hair growth. I think there is a disparity in communication and people think I am anti-wig or I'm speaking from a place of condescension. So, in one sentence, I will sum up this video. My main critique of the wig culture has always been around when we outrightly put down our own natural hair to worship them. I've only had an issue with the wig when it promotes texturism. The downsides to wig now, and what brings us to the end of this video, is 1, they can lead to hair dysmorphia. You can literally start to hate your own hair when you become overly dependent on wigs, especially when there is nothing wrong with your hair. If you're a black woman, you know for a fact that straight hair is less fragile than textured hair. Once you develop a dependency on wigs, it can get to the point where you can never even bother to care for your own hair. Hide it because you don't like how it looks in comparison to wigs. This happens. See, it's like always putting on filters on your photos to the point where you hate what your face looks like without it. It's not like the filter is a bad thing in of itself, but that the addiction can be unhealthy and create psychological issues, especially when we live in a society that already doesn't see our hair as good enough. It's a constant effort every day to accept and love oneself. When it comes to hair, wigs can affect that. It's that simple or difficult. The myth about protective styles. It becomes untrue when we say we are heavily dependent on wigs for protective styles, but this happens when we take them off. There is nothing protective about sacrificing your hair, my good sis. Not all wigs do this, but when they do, let's revisit that protective claim, eh? Wigs were originally meant for convenience and low effort. When we have to sit to get our wigs blow dried, flat ironed, then curled and glued down, it kind of defeats the purpose of wigs, which I don't quite have a problem with. But the excuse when you wear these types of wigs all the time but try to play it off as doing it because of convenience just doesn't fly. Or saying natural hair is difficult while simultaneously going through all the aforementioned steps to install a wig. 3. These wigs are insanely expensive. We already talked about the socioeconomic impacts that high-end wigs now have. They are undeniably pretty to look at, well, for the most part. And I think that it's interesting when I hear the excuse that natural hair is expensive to care for by someone who has a couple of these wigs. Just call it what it is, sis. The goal is not to bring about a society where all black women are forced to wear their natural hair. That is dystopian in of itself. The goal is to bring about a society where the default is self-acceptance, where wigs are truly what they are, accessories and not an extra limb, where they are a want and not a need, where our hairs are not so heavily scrutinized that we feel incomplete without wigs, where we give our natural hairs a chance and not use wigs as a default, where we don't see natural hair as cheap or tacky, where black women are no longer being denied jobs or discriminated against for their natural hairs. The goal is to be free. Well, we've come to the end of the video. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Do let me know your thoughts. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Please. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.